Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Luca, your host, as always. This is going to be the first of two parts of each review in the unacademic reviews of the classics. First of all, I'm going to release a plot summary where I just do a read through of the essentially a plot summary that I derived myself from what happens and my own view and take on the story. And you can just sit back and listen, and hopefully you'll get the gist of what happens in however long it takes, 10 to 20 minutes or so. And then what will come after that is an actual review by me, which hopefully by now there's many of them. When this video goes up, there won't be, but hopefully down the line. Yeah, if you're just here for the plot summary, I would have already put a time code up, so cool. But yeah, that's just a little update if you care about the reviews and stuff. So I'm going to get into that now. First of all, roll the intro. Okay, let's begin. Hello everybody. If you skip to this timestamp, then yeah, welcome. Hello, my name's Luca. I'm going to get into the plot summary right now. A War of the Worlds takes place from the viewpoint of a central character named the narrator. We follow his journey for most of the book, which you'll see later, and we experience the story from his perspective, what he sees, hears, experiences. That's what gets detailed. So here we go, I'm going to begin. First of all, the narrator notices a light that's been emitting from Mars through a telescope at an observatory at a place called Ottershaw in Surrey, England. He and his friend, who is a well-known astronomer, dismiss it, and they decide it's not an indication of life, and they say the chances of life on Mars are absolutely minuscule. But we know just how wrong he is about to be, because the book is called The War of the Worlds. Next, a large cylinder, referred to as the Falling Star, appears in the sky and crash lands into Maybury, where the narrator lives. He immediately goes to inspect it and concludes that it must have come from Mars, because he's an astronomer and he knows these things. He's the narrator, we take his word for it. News spreads quickly of this pod, and upon his revisiting of this pod sometime after, the cylinder opens and he gets his very first look at the Martians. A second Martian then emerges from the pod, and that's when the narrator decides to GTFO ASAP. He hides in the woods and watches as a group of men approach the pod. They carry a white flag to let their intentions of surrender known, and as soon as they get close, a large flash of light blinds everyone near, and when the concussion wears off, it's revealed that the men have been incinerated on the ground from which they stood. Following this was an array of flashes, causing everybody nearby to follow suit with the narrator and GTFO ASAP. Narrator gets back to his house and he tells his wife what he's seen. Soon, the military arrives and a second pod also arrives, very near the first, and a full-scale fight breaks out between Martian and humankind. It becomes obvious that the humans stand no chance against the Martians, and the heat rays that these Martians are using, the destructive weapons that the humans are just massively overpowered by. So the narrator plans to take his wife to Leatherhead, which is a bit east of Surrey, and that's where he thinks they'll be safe. They take a horse-drawn cart rented from an innkeeper. He gets his wife safe and goes to return the cart. When he arrives back at Maybury, he sees what can only be described as some kind of mech suit for Martians is towering over the pine trees. So in shock, he crashes the cart and accidentally kills the horses in the process, finding himself cut off from his wife, as there is a pod of Martians between him and his wife. He hops on a boat somewhere on the River Thames and heads toward London, first stopping at Walton, where he meets a curate, which to my understanding is like an admin at a church. I did some research, that's the best I can find, who will be his companion for the next few weeks. That wrapped up the story, or at least the first part of the story, and we get a kind of interlude next. So at this point, the story changes perspective to his younger brother, who is experiencing the invasion, but in London, which if you don't live in the UK, London's very much central in the hub, and then then Surrey is a bit more in the countryside. So we see this from a much more densely populated area. So in London, it took a bit longer for the news to reach, and there was a bit of doubt and hesitation to how big of a threat this really was, and it was only when the Martians began to storm London does anyone begin to panic. The beasts from Mars launch black smoke over the city, which is seemingly poisonous, which causes a mass exodus to flee by all citizens trying to make their way to Essex, where, hello, I live, where our brave narrator, or narrator's brother, intercepts a few men robbing 2 women, and he saves them, and in return they allow him to join them in their carriage, and then begin heading south to the southeast of England, where they board a steamer to Belgium, and they watch as 3 Martian war machines, which is what the original narrator saw and crashed his car over, were fighting a Navy ship. And that's where we leave his brother. And then we go back to the narrator, and we have a catch up with the narrator, and during this time we learn that he's been hiding in a church with his friend that he met, the curate, as I mentioned before, in a very well stocked house that they found that had been abandoned, and they'd been living off the supplies. Just as soon as we think everything is calm and relaxed, immediately a vivid green light appears and a pod lands so close to them that the narrator is rendered unconscious. Upon waking, he realizes the Martians are suspicious of their presence, and as they begin searching the wreckage of the house with their tentacles, in which they grab the churchman and narrowly miss the narrator. Thank God. This left the narrator questioning whether they were unaware of his presence, and he's very anxious and in a lot of doubt because he doesn't know if they know what he knows. So he waits in the house for 6 days, living off rations and diminished supplies, to finally emerge to realize that the Martians have abandoned the pod. They're no longer waiting by the house trying to flush him out, they've gone. He sets out for London thinking that that's his best bet, because he doesn't know what we know about his brother and the black smoke. And on his way, he meets some uniformed army men who inform him of what's happened the past couple weeks. They explain to him that London is destroyed and they have made a camp in the north of London. He tells the narrator how it's all over and humankind is, how he puts it, beat. He then tells us some weird mole-like fantasy about how he plans to build a community underground where they live in the sewers and hide from the Martians but thrive as a race. And the narrator, with his pride intact, declines the offer and instead opts to continue towards London. The road to London is littered with signs of destruction and bodies stacked miles high. It's clear that the Martian invasion has been successful. He hears a Martian chanting in the distance in a Martian-like way, and this is the moment that the narrator decides to concede. He decides he doesn't think life is worth living in a reality like this, and he decides to approach the Martian, intending to meet his end. As he approaches the Martian, as he gets closer, he starts to realize that it's not making any noise and it's not moving, and eventually, upon further inspection, he realizes that the Martian has died. In fact, actually, all the Martians have died. Unbeknownst to the narrator at the time, they'd all died of some disease that within the Earth's atmosphere or the new habitat they're in, they just weren't prepared for it, and it wiped them all out. Take that how you will. Hearing this, the narrator has a nervous breakdown spanning 3 whole days, while a family nurses him back to health. Then he makes his way back to Maybury and finds his wife there, alive. Then he gives a message about the significance of the invasion and tells future generations to prepare, and warns that this could happen again and history could repeat itself. So there you have it. That's the story of the War of the Worlds, from start to finish, front to back. I hope you enjoyed my narration. I hope my summary was enjoyable. And yeah, subscribe please, really helps me out. Liking the video is great, pushes it into whatever YouTube does, who knows anymore. And yeah, if you want to see the review or More summaries of the classics. I'll be reading them when you don't have time to, and I'll be giving you the stories that, you know, you didn't have time to hear. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing this channel. Have a good rest of your night, day, morning, wherever you're at. See you later. Goodbye. Higher than the eye can see. It's clear that the Martians... Jesus Christ. The road to London is littered with signs of destructions and bodies stacked miles high. It's clear that the Martians accept... My God, I can't speak. As he approaches the... Wait, what the fuck am I reading?